You've probably heard the phrase, there is no shortcut to success a million times. And by the way, I totally agree with this saying, but if there ever was a shortcut, then Brian Harris has found it. If you are a coach or creator looking to grow your business revenue, then listen up because today we're interviewing Brian Harris, who has discovered a way to get over 1,000 leads in less than a month without having a big audience. Brian calls this approach BOPA, meaning borrow other people's audience. And he discovered this marketing strategy by accident about 10 years ago when Noah Kagan shared one of his blog posts with his audience, positioning Brian's work in front of hundreds of thousands of people. Today, Brian will share with you how you can replicate this strategy in your own business and generate a consistent 10K per month in revenue.
That's really easy and really hard to screw up. So that's my basic thinking. First of all, is it's not a mystery, it's math. What's the math? First off, how much money do you need? What do you charge? How many clients do you need? Almost nobody does this, by the way. This is like elementary business 101, but no one does it. Like, this might sound super stupid. Oh, I'm the only one that hadn't done it. No. Like, I didn't even do it for a decade.
Welcome to The Creator's Adventure, where we interview creators from around the world hearing their stories about growing a business. Hey everyone, I'm Brian McAnulty, the founder of Heights Platform. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, we're here today with Brian Harris. He is the founder and CEO of Growth Tools, an Inc. 5000 company and monthly coaching service that makes it nearly impossible to fail at growing your online business and getting new coaching clients. Since quitting his job at Home Depot in 2012, he's consulted leading companies like Facebook, Keep, ConvertKit, HubSpot, and Teachable. His clients include industry titans like Michael Hyatt, Neil Patel, and Amy Porterfield. Brian is famous for BOPA, the most overlooked and underrated marketing strategy he inadvertently discovered 10 years ago when Noah Kagan shared an article with 100,000 people. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, my first question for you is, what would you say is the biggest thing that you did that has helped you to achieve the freedom to do what you enjoy?
Oh my goodness, you could go 20 directions with that. I've been thinking about this. I actually just wrote an email 30 minutes ago in the vein of this question. I would maybe start with the definition of freedom. Is very different thing. It means a very different thing to me now. I'm 12 years in, started in March of 2013. So 11 or 12 years into doing the online business thing, which is shocking. And I think at the time I would have defined freedom as the ability, I don't know, having enough money to do the things I wanted, or some superficial answer like that, which is a superficial, not real answer, by the way. That is not true. Money enslaves you the more you get it, if you don't grow as a human as well. Actually, I was looking up recently, and my wife and I, when we first got married and went through all the Dave Ramsey stuff and did the debt-free scream and all that stuff back in 2012 or 2013. And I think a lot of people define financial freedom specifically as that, some number. It's a number of some sort that is usually a moving target. But even if you make it a static target, it's still a number, which isn't freedom, actually. That means you're a slave to that number. And if you have that number, you're good. And if you don't have that number, you're in jail. You're bound up. And I just don't think that can't be true. That's actually by definition not true. So I think the answer to the question, what have I discovered? I'll re-ask the question. What have I discovered over 10 or 11, 12 years of doing this? And here's a unique maybe flavor to add to this. This is a long-winded answer to the question, but it's something I've been thinking about just a lot lately. Coaching a lot of the names of people that people know and looking behind the scenes of lots of businesses, man, you can add lots of zeros onto revenue, onto your profit, onto your bank account and your investments or whatever, and none of that equals freedom. Some of the most fear-based, bound-up people I know have lots of zeros. So they set a number at some point along the way, and that number ain't got nothing to do with being free of anything. You become a slave to that. If the bank account doesn't go up, you get filled with fear and you do dumb stuff and your hand just clenches. So I think for me, I think about that visual a lot. Like what gets me here? What gets me just open-handed? And it has nothing to do with money. In fact, it gets harder to do this the more zeros that exist in the revenue top line P&L bank account. So what is freedom? I think that's a good question, but it's not money. It actually has nothing. It can't, by definition, have anything to do with your business success. If it does, you're just a slave to the business then, and you will never have peace. You will never have joy. It's impossible because the business will never be the full completeness of whatever you want it to be. You will never get there. It's impossible because it grows. So what is freedom? I think that's the first question before we answer the question, how do I have it? That's a great question. And if so, what has worked? And I would say, am I totally free? No. What has worked? I think there's a couple things. One of those being aware of the fear that exists and not working through it or from it. I think if I were to go not super duper deep, I think that's like one of the most fundamental things, being aware of what fear exists. Is it fear of the launch not working, or the email not working, or the product never being right, or the engineer I hired doesn't work, or whatever's going on for you? What is that thing? And then how can I not live in the place of fear, which is always a lie 100% of the time? And what is the truth about that thing, and operating from that space? That is the only thing that can actually get you to any level of freedom. Otherwise, you're just a slave to a different thing. You used to be a slave to a boss. Now you're a slave to a number, your business, or the team, or whatever's going on for you inside. So I don't take a light view of that question. I think it's actually the question. I think about like when we coach people, there's two things we coach on. It used to be one. For 10 years it was one. But turns out you can't just coach this and get what they want. Thus, they will eventually move on to somebody else they think can give them the thing they want. And the thing we coach on, our goal is to make it almost impossible for our clients to fail at getting more customers in their business. That's the number one optimization point. The two major things that we have to do to make that happen is first, you got to handle the hard skill side. We think now like getting there is a French door. It's not just a single door of walking through like tactical marketing work that you do, a Facebook funnel or Instagram thing or ManyChat or SEO, whatever thing you're excited about right now. Yes, you got to have a sales channel that actually works. That is a fundamental item. It's the rebar in your foundation of your house. But you can't just have rebar. You got to actually have concrete. And the concrete is, I don't even have the right words to talk about this yet, but like you got to have that part. You got to have the tactical marketing side down. And really just need one sales channel. You can go to a $5 million company with one sales channel. You can go to a $20 million company with two sales channels with one product. That's all you need in 99.9% of situations. But if you don't have the other side, which is not working out of fear, but working out of a place of what is absolutely true about you as a human and about the situation, you will always be a slave to something. So now we coach both sides, and it's a little tricky because people don't hire us for this. People aren't problem aware of this side. Some people are, if they're super intentional and really pay attention and work on themselves, they know this is a thing. The people that are harder are the people that don't know it's a thing. They can be way along in business, way mature. Everybody knows their names, but it ain't got nothing to do with this over here. You're smart marketers. You could crush it. You could triple the business every year if this wasn't the thing, but you're close-fisted over here. Like you are trying to compare yourself to Tony Robbins or Dave Ramsey or whoever the person is, whoever you, Alex, or whoever you're obsessed with right now on YouTube and Instagram or whatever. Like you're trying to compare it and trying to do the things they would do, but like you aren't them. You will never be them. Like you can't do things you can only do things like you do. And if you do that, it'll lead you down fear. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So now we work on both things. Because if you don't, they won't win. They will get to a point of success where the fear overcomes and then they'll stop. And they think it's the tactical marketing side. And sometimes it is. A lot of people need help with that. But if you don't get who you are and working out of truth right, you'll lose every time. And you'll be just a slave to, now I got 20 million in my bank account or 20,000 or $20. The number actually doesn't matter. That's why you hear like trust fund kids and people that get rich, all this stuff. It is people who have the number, but they have no freedom. Thus, they're killing people or an equivalent. Some people literally, some people figuratively. They just go hurt everybody. Hurt people. It's because they don't know who they are and they're wrapped up in fear. They might have got this success over here. One door's open, but they haven't got both doors open. But when you get somebody, any human who knows who they are and you add the tactical marketing side on it and you work out of peace and truth, like, dude, that's like, those are the best humans on the planet by a mile. The number in the bank account doesn't matter. So something in the direction of that is where the freedom thing is.
That's an excellent answer, and I'm glad that you went into it so deeply because I like to ask people this question because I feel it's so important, and It's something that I feel that I was fortunate enough to discover the importance of thinking about this for myself early on. When I was in high school, I was scared to death about what do you mean go to college? What am I going to do? What do I want to do? That's really expensive, and really deeply thinking about what is it that I actually enjoy and care about. and not trying to realizing I didn't want to become a slave to money, to a problem, to my business, whatever it was. And my philosophy now is very much like, what can I do today that I am enjoying and I would be doing tomorrow, regardless of the outcome of today.
And I'll take it a step further. I don't even think that's sufficient. Here's why. There's a popular mode of thought in different veins of self-work and religion and whatnot that all the answers are inside of you. That just ain't true. If all the answers were inside of you, you could be a monk in the woods and sit there and meditate all day long and be totally fine. And that doesn't work, actually. The whoever you look to as a higher power that created you and put you on earth, that's the one that actually knows. Just like you know your software better than anybody because you made it. And more specifically, I don't know if you're the engineer or not, the engineer who's writing the code, they're the only one that actually knows it. The user experiences it through their perspective. So they use the software, and they know all the stuff, but they don't know the software. The only person that really knows it, the bugs and the features and what's good and what needs some refinement, is the actual human who made the thing. So like, if you're trying to find it all yourself, like that's actually impossible. You won't get to who you actually really, really are. You can't read the label from inside the jar. Doesn't work. You can get a long ways. You can talk to friends. You can do all that. But like, unless you are asking up, you will never find out down who you actually are. It's by definition impossible because you didn't write the code. Last I checked, I didn't make me. I just happened one day and came out. In fact, today's my middle son's seventh birthday. And I was like, he didn't have any part of making himself. He just came out and he was who he was. And, he can steward that and do different things along the way. But like, he didn't write the code. So he doesn't know the code because he didn't write it. But yes, getting to the answer of who am I and how does that play out right now in my business, I think because I'm a super practical person. You can easily take these topics into woo-woo land, and I hesitate talking about any of them and very, very rarely ever have, actually. But it felt more and more convicted that this is it's as core, actually it's more core than whatever marketing tactical stuff you have going on. And I spent the first decade only doing this. And I feel like now it's like, you got to have both of those things to win. Because if you can get $10 million in revenue yearly here at high profit margins, but you don't have this, you lost.
Yeah.
You lost.
Well, if you have
that, like you're messed up.
If you have that, you'll do it forever. And you'll eventually get to whatever number, but
all that'll come.
Yeah, exactly. So
and some smart person said money only makes you more of what you are, and it just puts a magnifying glass and a multiplier on it. So like if you have fear making 80 grand a year and doing whatever, like bro, you add 2 zeros on that and you're really messed up. So yeah. Anyway.
So along those lines, and I know I'm asking a big question here to go through all of your history. So
sure.
to go through it quickly enough so we can get into some tactics.
Yep.
Can you share maybe like a moment or series of events that led you to quit your job at Home Depot in 2012 and then eventually turned into what you have today?
Yeah, 2 things. First, I want to say this to close the book on what we were talking about before. I'm actually doing this is the first time I'm ever going to teach this publicly. We did it on our team internally a little bit, and I've done a little private stuff with friends on like, how do I clear the fear out of my life and how do I figure out who I am, who I was made to be, and how does that play out today as a salesperson or owner or engineer or whatever? Like, how do I use that tactically today? Because I'm like the most tactical human ever. So like, but what does that actually mean? Great, you're whatever, but like, your spirit animal's a butterfly. Awesome, cool, who cares? Back to business. But how do you actually use it? How do you do it? So next Friday at 1 p.m. Central, I'm doing a free workshop. There's nothing to buy, nothing to sell. It's just me talking about this in depth, how it very practically affects me every day. So I'm going to, as we go through, there'll probably be other things we talk about, but growthtools.com/heights will be a little landing page. You can grab the link over there and show up to the workshop. So we do those every Friday. So we'll do one next Friday. If you want to come, feel free to pop in, register for it so you can actually be there. Okay. What led me to quitting job? There's a long version of the story. One short version is I was watching, I'm pretty sure it was Stu McLaren, who's a great dude. I was watching like a launch video of his. I think at the time he was working for Michael Hyatt, so they were probably launching Platform University or something. That detail does not matter. But they were doing a pre-launch, like Jeff Walker style video series leading in. And I was watching one of the videos, and I remember being in the cubicle I was working in an engineering company. At the time, I was past the lumber company and in an engineering company. And I was watching the video, and he said something to the effect of, and you just want to quit your job so you can, work less and spend more time with your family and live life on your own terms. All of which sounds great, but I remember having a visceral reaction when he said that. Like, that's not why I'm doing this at all. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it resonated 0%. Like the pure, actually not the pure, the surface level idea of the 4-hour work week has just never been anything remotely interesting to me. There's super tactical stuff that Tim talks about. And the heart of what he's saying is actually really good and true. But for me, it's just like, the reason I want to do this, I think, is because part of what I was made to do is to create things. I think that's just part of who I am. I've never been able to get away from it. When I do it and live within that, things feel good and peaceful. And even if it's hard, it's still good. So that was a launching point for me of, okay, well, if I'm made to make things, what am I supposed to be making? And after a winding bit of a journey, I found myself 12 years later, to our goal is to start a coaching company who makes it almost impossible for our clients to fail at growing their business. There's lots of reasons behind that, but like eventually after a while of trialing and error, and we did courses and memberships and software and books and every product type that I've ever come across. But when we got down to the end of the day, the most effective thing, which is a resonating point for me over and over and over again. We could sell lots of courses and do lots of things, but like they were never all that effective. The completion rate was single digits. The success rate was below a percentage point. And that's the case with any of them really. But the thing that worked, the thing that actually really truly helped people was one-on-one coaching. It just works great. But the reason you don't have a lot of it is because it's hard to do with a lot of people. Anybody can coach 10 or 20 people, but man, you get past that, you even get to that. And that's a lot of effort. And I can't do other stuff, so the income becomes capped and all that stuff. But the even more root level problem we're trying to solve is how do you scale? How do you do one-on-one coaching on scale? How do you take, imagine somewhere out there, if you were to take all the marriage counselors that exist, for instance, there's one of them that's probably the best, like a really, really good one. Their effectiveness, their all that, just like the best. There is one of those humans somewhere, but they can only work with 20, 30 people. Like they literally can't see more humans than that. The schedule is full and the word time doesn't exist. So then they do what all of us do. They write a book, they make a course, they have group coaching. That's what some version of that's what they're going to do. But all of those totally suck in comparison to the thing that actually works, which is one-on-one coaching. Like there's a reason that Jesus in the Bible had 12 people that followed him. But really amongst the 12, he had 3 that were super close. And amongst the 3, he had 1 he was really close to. It's like even Jesus worked with 12 humans. He had a pretty tight cap, but then he taught those people how to, anyway, blah, blah, blah. So you have a cap and you can either go to a less effective product type. It is, all of them. Your course is not great, by the way. Everybody's course kind of sucks. Everybody's book kind of sucks. If you're measuring off success rate, the number of humans that purchase and get the result that they were looking for. And there's lots of reasons well beyond the product for that. But one-on-one coaching just works. So for the past 4 years, we've been just exclusively honed in like a laser to solve that problem. And the skin that we're putting on that is helping clients get customers. And once we solve that, we hopefully roll it out to other industries. Like, how do you make it almost impossible to fail at having a great marriage? Because right now it's way easier to have a sucky marriage than a great one. How do you make it almost impossible to fail to be great at personal finance? Because right now it's way easier to suck at it than to be great at it. So I'm hopeful that over the next year or two, we'll finish nail in the coffin on that problem and then be able to give that to other people and use it in other industries. And that is exciting because we're creating like a real solution to a real deal problem that when solved helps way beyond what we're doing. And it is lucrative and all that stuff. It's fun. It scratches all the itches as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of things with that. I agree with all the things that you're talking about for the most part. With the courses, I think I'm going to be biased on that, but I think that there are many things that if you are a coach, you've got to teach kind of the same thing to everybody. And so a course product is great if you want to kind of get everybody up to a certain level of this baseline where now you can help them one-on-one after that and get them to that aha moment and that full result that they're after.
Oh, totally.
But I do agree that
learning is a terrible use of one-on-one coaching time. Application and troubleshooting is a great use of one-on-one time. So for even us, when we teach it, like we had a marriage counselor, our favorite marriage counselor we ever had. We've all tried to always have one in our marriage. And one of our favorite ones, like the first 12 sessions was just him telling stuff. In fact, after the third session, I was like, do you have a book we can just read? So we can come in knowing this stuff And just like
Yeah.
you can then quiz us and ask us questions. So absolutely, like the learning piece is kind of the easy part. So doing that async or group, that's fine. But where the rubber hits the road is, okay, how do I apply that? And here's a fight we had, or here's a tricky situation we keep encountering, and I'm not able to make the connection between this concept you taught and the actual application. One-on-one coaching,
Yeah.
that's where it actually shines, and that's where all not directed learning really sucks. Like ultimately, like everybody that has a course, I have a course, we sell it, it's great. But like I know the effectiveness of that is just a small portion, but it does prime people to one, receive coaching, and you need it. Like you need a learning mechanism in coaching because you do have to teach things. But that's not where the superpower in coaching is at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I agree with that too, because so we're actually focused on a similar problem, though not as in depth as you are. But inside Heights platform, so we built Heights AI Coach, and that was our take on, well, how would we be able to scale one-on-one coaching to help all of our customers in that same way? And it's a hard problem. I'm interested in your
Very
thoughts
hard.
about it.
It is not an easy problem to solve. It would be solved.
Yeah.
No one solved it, by the way.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
no one solved it. This is an open problem for humanity that has not been solved.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
So I think though also like for our audience, like I think they're not going to go out and start building AI systems and things like this. But what I think would start to apply to them and interest them is on your website, you state that it's nearly impossible for your clients to fail and you guarantee results in 90 days. So what systems have you put in place to be able to like ensure a success rate that's that high?
Oh my goodness. We need to do like a 4-hour workshop just on this genre of topic. How do you have high success rate teaching people ultimately? How do you get the result? Because ultimately they don't really care about the training. They don't care about the trinket. I mean, they think they do in the beginning, but it actually has nothing to do with that. What I want at the end of the day is a great marriage, or to be a good parent, or to have a business that's actually growing and stress for all that. So that's the actual thing. So for the first thing, like if you want to guarantee a result, which I think is, we've learned a lot about that. Oh my goodness. With zeros on the end of it. Lots of zeros on the end of it to the negative. But the first thing is having a reasonable timeline and a reasonable result in a 90-day period. And people drastically, and they do this due to pressure typically in the industry of other people promising lots of things. I just tell you flat out, these people promising these absolutely insane results in short period, 30 days, 90 days, they're actually full of crap. And their refund rates are over 30% and their business is tanking. If they aren't now, they will be very soon. We've learned this. We've learned that this is not like a theoretical lesson. You do that crap, you will lose.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. I've seen, especially more recently, there's been more of a,
Yeah, it's hard
these
now.
marketers
Hey,
running ads, a crazy promise. They see money coming in and they think,
Yep.
oh, must be working. Then they find out 6 months from now, a year from now, wow, actually I have to refund this many people. That was the money I needed to grow and scale, and now I don't have that.
you will lose. It is impossible.
So what's the solution?
And right now, I will say this too. Right now is the hardest time in the market since I've been in the market, been in this for 12 years. So people are getting desperate right now. If you see a spike in that, they need sales and they're just promising lies. So solution first, what is if people were to do 70% of the work over 90 days, what's the first big milestone they would hit? What is that? And then promise that if they do the work. It's actually kind of simple. Now, it depends on your, okay, so one client, for instance, they're a marriage counselor, and they defined your marriage will be, what was it specifically? It's going to be twice as good. They had a measurement there. So I will butcher the specifics. So I'm trying to remember the exact line we wrote, but it's something like your peace level or your confidence or whatever will be twice as good as it was when you hired us 90 days ago. If not, you get your money back. Now, there's a condition on that. You do have to do work. If you don't do work, I can't guarantee you anything. So like if you just buy the thing, don't do anything, I'm not giving you a refund back. That's a you problem, not a me problem. Now I'm going to design systems to try to like make it almost impossible for you not to either, unsubscribe or do the work. So I'm going to text you, I'm going to email you, I'm going to check in on you, I'm going to like do my job as your coach to chase you down. But ultimately, like, man, if you run the other direction 1,000 miles an hour, I'm not going to handcuff you and drag you in. But I will go to the edge of that, actually, because I think that's my job when you hire me to advise and coach you. So I think a reasonable result in 90 days that is of substance. So if you can increase your marriage quality by 25% in 90 days, is that possible? Yeah, it actually is. And this client has a very particular tool that takes about 2 minutes to do every day. It's called the Core Emotion Wheel. And if you do that every day for 90 days, it's actually one of the most life-changing things me and my wife have ever learned, and we apply to our kids and apply to team, and it's fantastic. ConnectionCoach.co is their website. Go check it out. Grab their lead magnet. It's called the Core Emotion Wheel. It's awesome. And you spend 2 minutes every day doing this little exercise, and like it diffuses situations so quickly, the ones that would escalate and have a blast radius on them. Again, you can apply it marriage, parenting, kids, team, whatever. So they can, but here's how they would do it. They would measure it in the beginning. So survey, onboarding call, whatever your mechanism is. Hey, right now, scale of 1 to 10, what's your quality of marriage? Right now, it's a 4. Great. So that means our goal, your goal actually, because it's not my goal. I'm your coach. I don't own your marriage. You own your marriage. So your goal over the next 90 days to increase that by 25%. So was it a 6 or something? Is to get it from a 4 to a 6. I don't expect you to have a world-class marriage in 90 days. And if you even say that, you're totally full of yourself. It's never going to happen. That's not real life. And then at the end of it, I'm going to measure it again, and we'll have a binary measurement. And then the only question is, did you get it? Yes or no? And did you do the work needed to get there? So what I have found is the only people, and you can define, what do you do if that doesn't happen? Do you refund? I find that to not be helpful, actually, in any way. It drives them out of the product and solution instead of into it. Instead, it's less sexy on the marketing side, but we found it to affect conversions basically none. But you want the mechanic, if they fail, to drive them deeper into relationship with you, not further out of relationship. And if you tell someone, as soon as you say the word refund, they're looking for the way out, especially as you add zeros on the end. This is slightly less important if you're in the sub $1,000 range. It's gigantically important if you're in the $5,000 plus range. If you attach a refund in a coaching product or teaching product environment, that person always has that. It's like a prenup in a marriage. It's always in the back of your mind. I always got a way out. I can keep my money even if it doesn't work out, and you're just slave to money again. So for us, it's a reasonable result in 90 days, a clear measurement on the front end, a clear measurement on the back end. And the only people that really get sideways are the people who they think you don't care, or they think you didn't do your part. So ultimately, you can't control their thoughts, but you can do things that signal that to them. So you can check with them every week and say, hey, all you got to do is the Core Emotion Wheel every day. It takes 2 minutes. That's it. 90 days later, your marriage will be 25% better. That would be their core promise. And that is true. If you do that even 70% of the time, you're going to be substantially better. So it's just, did you do it or not? And did I reach out to you once a week, check in? Did you do the Core Emotion Wheel for 7 days this week? Nope. What's your plan to fix it next week? So one other thing I'll share here, and you can ask me questions, is a thing we messed up on that sounded good, but in retrospect, just like laid the wrong foundation of relationship. Was we talked about us getting you results. We talked about like our job, us getting you results. And that's not it. Like, I can't care more about your business than you. That should be impossible. If I care more than you, something's wrong. So our job, and we have these clearly defined roles, and the first thing we do when somebody hires us is, here's your job, here's our job, just so we're clear. And that means our job isn't to get you results. My job isn't to impress you. My job is to make it, actually, we clearly define it as, my job is to focus on relationship and giving good advice. That's my job. I actually can't do more than that as a coach. And as a course creator, membership person, you definitely can't do more than that. Their job is to focus on taking action and get results. That's their job. So if they're not doing stuff, that's their problem. Now my job is to help them. So I need to point that out and show them and facilitate the process. So clearly defined roles as you lean in more and more to promises and guarantees becomes substantially important, or your refund rates and your pissed off people and all that stuff will just go to crap. So those are a few things we've learned.
Yeah, that's excellent. So you mentioned about how like somebody's expectations or them feeling that you didn't do your part because they're expecting you to get results for them. I found definitely that when that happens, now you've got a client that they feel bad about the whole experience. Yeah. So you're not getting great reviews from them. They didn't get what they want, and so like you're not happy. You wanted to provide them to get them to their goal, but it is an issue of like maybe their action, maybe their expectations, things like that. If it gets to that point, is there a way to fix it or repair the relationship? Or are you saying that the best
Yeah.
solution is actually the upfront like expectations and setting it up?
All of the above, because you're dealing with humans. You can have the best framed person ever come in, and 120 days in, they're totally sideways. Or you can have somebody, literally, we were talking about somebody this morning, 3 hours after hiring us and signing their contract, they're totally sideways. It's like, ultimately, you're dealing with humans, and we're just really messy, jacked up people. So you got to be able to navigate interpersonal relationships. So maybe pause here real quick. What I'll do at that /Heights page, I'll put a copy of a couple things, actually three things that'll be super helpful here. One is our contract. That's like a contract you can think of as like, when we disagree, here's the terms by which we disagree. It needs to be the place of truth of what happens when things go sideways, because they will. So I'll put a copy of that. Second thing, I'll put a copy. One of the key things we do at multiple points in the first 90 days is we have like expectation video. Like, hey, you just literally, there's a video as soon as somebody buys, before they can even sign the contract, that is called, "What Did I Just Buy?" That clearly defines out, in like normal human terms, is me on a loom with a doc, and they get a link to the doc and everything. And when they get on the onboarding call, it's like, hey, did you watch it? What'd you like? What made sense? Great. You good? Cool. All right. Next. Because from that point forward, third item I'll give you is our what do we call it? We call it our, it's an SOP for disgruntled clients. We have a name for it. I forget the name. So I'll put that in there as well. It is like, I use it all over life now. So when someone gets sideways, despite all of that, or we didn't do a great job of that, but still, they're there. They're at a place that we call it the snow globe is shaking. You can't see straight when the snow globe's shaking. You got practical, anything doesn't matter, actually. If you try to go, like if you have a kid who's losing their mind and like crying or whatever because somebody made fun of them and they hurt themselves, and you're like, but think about it real quick. Let's examine the neurons in your brain. And they're like, it's like, what are you talking? Like if you try to go hyper practical in emotional situations, it doesn't work. If you're married, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not and you've been in relationships, you do. But so one thing we found, and I'll just give you this opinion, y'all can walk through it and see it. One key item: the person who's handling the disgruntled person better not be in fear right then of what might happen. If you are, it will make everything worse. If you're scared of, oh man, they paid me $7,000 and now they're super pissed off and threatening because they're going, like, there's, 1% of the population is just crazy, by the way. So if you sell to enough people, you deal with legitimately diagnosable crazy people. So you're going to deal with that person. It's going to happen. So one, you better be out of fear yourself. You better clear the fear before you go into that call. So the very first thing we do, first step of the SOP, is we have something called an airing a grievance call, where we get on the call and we tell them in the email, like they write, and you could tell these emails because they're usually like 17 pages long, single spaced, whatever. I just see that email. I don't read it. And the first thing I do is send an airing agreements email, or our team does it. They do the majority of this now. And the airing agreements email is like, man, Susie, I totally get where you're coming from. Thank you so much for bringing this up. Man, I value what you're saying. I would love to get on a call just to hear you out. The goal of this call isn't to fix anything. The goal of the call isn't to debate you or disagree with you. I just want to totally hear your heart and where you're coming from. That's the email. First off, that just disarms. I mean, crazy people are still crazy, so they're still going to be all over the place and the snow globe's still shaking. But that's like calm the snow globe. Just a calmed, measured, not fear-based approach to it. That email does a lot. Then you get on the call and you just listen and ask questions. Not defensive, not explaining yourself, zero defense, zero protection, zero promoting yourself. Oh man, I get that. Tell me more about that. What happened there? And then at the end of the call, no solutions. It's like, hey, Susie, what I'm going to do, I'm going to spend the next 24 hours just thinking about this, reviewing this, investigating a few things, and I'll email you back in 2 days about this. Does that sound good? That sounds good. First off, what happened there for Susie, probably for the first time, literally in her entire life, was somebody just sat there and held space and listened to her. That is a exceedingly rare thing for any human to do for another human, especially the two humans who are in open combat. So if you can not be in fear,
respond to that email with another long email, now you're in a fight. Now there is a combat instead.
No, never combat ever. It never works. Ever.
Yes.
Like unless one of you kills the other, it will not work. Israel and Hamas will never get along. Either they will come to it from a place not in fear, or one of them will die. It's the only possible route. As long as you're in open combat, either one side dies, or you come to it from not from a place of fear and you get to solution. If you're in open combat, no one wins. Everyone dies every time. So the way you would respond to that, let's work through this, because this is the real stuff behind any teaching, coaching, sales business. What do you do with the crazy people? And I'm using crazy in quotes of like the hard people, because they're just hard. Yeah. There's hard kids. There's hard. This is just people. So if they respond back, if I send that email, I'd love to get on a call. One, that practically never happens. A very small percentage of cases with someone respond to a calm email. In fact, if a coach said to me, hey, Susie went off the rails, I sent the airing agreements email and she just went off the rails again. over 2,000 one-on-one coaching clients. I don't think I've ever actually heard that. But if I did, the first thing I do is look at the email the coach sent, and I would bet they were triggered and fear-based in that email, and it would be palpable. It just doesn't happen. If it did, though, if they responded back, nope, I hate you, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sue you, and BBB, and all the things you could think of to do, I'd be like, dang, Susie, you got to stay out of fear, or you're going to get in a war and everyone dies. Those are the only, there's not another option. If you go try to do the self-righteous, like, Susie, I sent you an email, and I tried to be good to you, and I tried to do that, all you're doing is defend, you're in war now. Not going to work.
Yeah.
So it's like, Susie, man, totally get where you're coming from. Unfortunately, the only positive step forward here is for us to talk person to person, not via text where we can be misunderstood and and I want to hear you. So if you're not willing to do that, I totally get it. But I'm not going to respond to anything other than that going forward. I'm not being mean. I'm not trying to be defensive. That is the only next step. And they'll get on the call. And if they don't, I'll literally just ignore their emails until they do. That's it. Because nothing positive will happen with that person unless you talk to them and hear them out and bring the snow globe down. And then after you do that, you can get to like practical, actual solutions. We have something called an options email. We send them after that, depending on the situation. It's like, hey, Susie, most situations, either yes, hey, actually, you do deserve whatever, the refund or the whatever bonus or whatever thing they said, or they don't. They just don't qualify or egregiously don't qualify at all. And it's like, hey, can't do that due to X, Y, and Z, but here's 3 things we can do. And you give them options and you just walk through that. So anyway, I'll put a copy of that. I think this is, it's one of the reasons people don't do a lot of high-end stuff is because you hit these really real situations and they can like gut punch you like literally nothing else will hit you like these kind of situations do. But if you know what to do, it'll help you in every area of life. And they're not, at the end of the day, that complicated. You can diffuse them. And you can't, some of the people, probably half the time with the crazy ones, they come back in and they're some of the best people ever. Because now they've had someone walk through a hard situation with them, hear them, see them, treat them with respect, and they resolved it. And man, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, like now you just helped them like nobody else would.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, and you mentioned the point about the contract earlier too, and like sharing that. And I think it's important to note that like the contract, it's not about like just the legal, but it's like what you're describing here, defining these processes. And it made me think back to like early on in business, I did graphic design. Mm-hmm. And I remember working with this one customer, and there was all these designers involved in producing these magazines. And things were just not defined well. And all the time, like the thing is supposed to go to print, like it has to be printed because it's got to be mailed to everybody. And we have these designers like asking these questions about like how to set up a file or not asking them and setting it up completely wrong. And it's like, well, how could we get to this point that this has happened? And later on, I built this print business with doing these high-end business cards, and people could order the business cards. And at first, people that worked with me before in that other business thought like, well, how can you even begin to do this? There's going to be so many problems of all these designers submitting files and having no clue what to do. And I said, well, we defined it all on our website. We show them how to prepare it. We give them all the things they need. They have a template. They can use this. And because all of that is defined in a certain way, because we've set up ways for them to communicate with us, we just don't have those problems. Yeah. It just doesn't happen because it's all been properly defined in the process. And so I think having that in the form of coaching in your contracts, it's not just about like legally protecting yourself, but it's setting both you and your client up for success.
100%. It does both because you do want to legally protect yourself, especially if you're in the refund.
Yes, you want that too.
Want to refund you for sure want to be protected because you can win all of those. Like the crazy people that want to sue you due to X, Y, and Z. We've only had one of those ever, but like we've had people threaten it. And it's like, man, like like for us, one way. Anyway, I'll put the current contract because I'm a little fuzzy because we've changed it a few times over the years. But one of the ways we used to define it is just number of action items completed. So think back to the core emotion wheel thing. Just do it every day for 90 days. Your marriage is going to improve by 20%. In fact, just do it 70% of the days and you're good. So if somebody gets the end of it and their marriage hasn't improved by 20%, because that's a very subjective thing too, by the way. And that one, I love to have it a little more specific and less subjective, but I think that's good enough for them. But if you get to the end and you have a refund clause that kicks in for like a $5,000 or $10,000 thing, man, losing $5,000 or $10,000 is filled with pain. So did they do the work or not? And if like you look at your tracker whatever maybe it's a spreadsheet or a text they send or something for some mechanic for that, and they've only done the core emotion wheel 6 times out of 70 times they're supposed to do it. It's like, Susie, I don't know. Again, you wouldn't want to talk like this. You want to talk in a non-triggered way. It was like, internally, I'd be saying, Susie, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you didn't do the work, and I texted you every day you didn't do it, and you still didn't do it. Like, let's just go another 90 and let's commit and get on the call, recommit to the thing, and go forward. But if Susie were to come out, she was like, nope, you said I would get there. I feel like I did my part. Here's a notice of serve, and you're going to pay me. It's like, you just want to be able to send a copy of your contract because any lawyer would see it in their proof and be like, yeah, no, you're good. You don't have anything to worry about. Because if you get into the refund game and you sell a lot of units, you will encounter that. So you do want to protect yourself legally, but it's less about that. It's like, it's like your marriage vows. It's like if at any point in the relationship, you're like pulling them up and going through them to prove a point, like that's going to hurt relationship, not help it. But if you get to the point of the very end, it'd probably be a helpful thing to pull out and look at, so we're aware of what we just said in the very beginning. So same thing with this. It's when we disagree, what are the ground rules? And it isn't something I want somebody to rush through signing. Like I tell them stop, read it. In fact, I make them watch a Loom video of me reading it before they can read it, so they actually know what it says. And just know, because 99 times out of 100, it doesn't even matter what it says. As long as people know, they'll adopt that frame and work within it. So being egregious with these guarantees and everything, it is a net positive in no way. But if you just tell them the truth, show them what's possible if they hustle. Hey, tell me what B-level effort is, A-level effort produces, and then just write that down so it's just in writing so we both know. People are good. Like most people are reasonable and fine. It's when we start being a marketing-led company that tries to push the envelope with things, that's when things get kind of weird. So anyway, I'll put a copy in growthtools.com/heights of our contract, our SOP for handling people when the snow globe is shaken, and our expectations video. And hopefully that'll help people. And you can adapt it to all kind of situations. But those have been 3 things that have substantially moved the needle for us.
Awesome. So we're getting close to time. I want to ask one more question. Make sure we cover this though. Yep. You're renowned for your approach to business growth that you call BOPA, which stands for Borrow Other People's Audience. This is what you discovered after Noah Kagan shared one of your articles. Can you explain more about this? Because I know, from our audience of creators, they see themselves as these creators, not marketers. And usually, most people's first thought is, okay, I'm starting this business. I need to build an audience, or I need to go spend a bunch of money on ads.
Right.
So how is BOPA the solution to that?
Both of which have low chances of success, by the way. So I'm a very simple human. My goal is what's the hardest thing to screw up? Let's go do that. If it has 1,000 parts, these numbers are probably wrong, but it's directionally accurate. Like an internal combustion car has something like 2,500 parts under the hood. But an electric car like a Tesla has 200. And as it turns out, Teslas break down still, but they break down at 1/10 the rate of a normal car. They just have less things to break. It's harder to screw up. Stuff still breaks, but at way lower rates than the other. So my approach to business is just trying to be hyper practical. What's my best chance to win? And let's just go do that thing versus the things that are utterly complicated and have 1,000 moving parts in it, like some ascension funnel. Let me grow a newsletter, send an email every day, have a $7 thing, a $99 thing, a $500 thing, a $5,000. But there are a million things in that to screw up. And I actually, after 12 years, have not seen a single business ever do that successfully. Ever. Not one. Mm-hmm. Not even, there's a lot of things that work and people get lucky with. I've never even seen someone get lucky with that. Ever. It is the most unpractical thing. And I feel like it's the most widely held thing that people want to do. Let me start low ticket and work my way up. It's no, all of that is low chance of success. So for me, ultimately, I want to think about client acquisition, customer acquisition. How do I get humans that don't know me right now, random people on the internet, to give me money for my thing so I can help them? That's the fundamental question. It's a fundamental question I started 12 years ago with. And I've thought about it most every day for 12 years straight. And one key thing that's helpful to think of, and I'll talk about BOPA, is getting customers is not a mystery, it's math. And there's 3 very basic numbers. There is, how do I get visitors to the page where they pay money? How do I convert those visitors once they're on the sales page or on the sales call or however you sell? And that equals customers. So if I have 100 people come to my thing, my sales page or my sales call, and 10% of them convert, then I get 10 customers every time. That's just the math of the thing. So if that's my paradigm going into it, I need some sales channel to produce that. So suspend that for a minute. That could be YouTube SEO or Google SEO or partnerships or ads or whatever thing you got, whatever thing you're obsessed with, or in a quiz funnel or something like that. All that's going to equal, though, people that see your offer, eyeballs, people that convert, and that's going to equal your customer number. So you got to know, and this is very simple. 100 times 10% is 10, or 1,000 times 1% is 10. I think my math's right on that. So whatever your numbers are, you got to know your equation, and you just work the equation. So if I didn't get the 10 customers, okay, so 100 people hitting my sales page or getting on a sales call would equal a 10% close rate and 10 people. But I didn't get that. I only got one person. So what happened? Just one of the numbers didn't work. So which one? And go fix that. So if I was supposed to get 100 visitors, but I only got 50, but I converted 6 people off that, man, I converted, what was it, 12 or 13%. So I beat the conversion number, but my visitors are low. So I need to solve that problem. Just fundamentally thinking about client acquisition like that has been the most helpful thing. So then the next question is, okay, which sales channel is just the easiest to do? So for client acquisition, for getting eyeballs, what I have found the hardest to screw up, and this is like for any client that comes to us sub 5 million typically a year in revenue, the first channel we help them install is BOPA, borrowing other people's audiences. Instead of going and spending money or creating content or giving affiliate fees out, those are different primary mechanisms for sales channels. Instead of doing that, just give them content. In fact, this is a version of this right now on this podcast. You have an audience of people that listen to this podcast. I have my brain after 12 years. I have content. So there are hundreds of people encountering Brian Harris and Growth Tools for the first time ever. So let's say 1,000 people listen to this podcast, and growthtools.com/heights, there's a handful of bonuses that are directly related to what we're talking about. My hope is if 1,000 people listen, 100 people will go to that page. And I know the math of our page for, related audiences. About 10% of them will schedule the sales call with us. So let's just do the math real quick. If 100 people, or 1,000 people listen, 100 people go to that page, and we close typically about 10%. That's 10 clients for us. 10 clients. And our average order value is like $10,000. That's $100,000. That's A plus. Like if the audience is perfect and all that. But like, okay, let's go to like C minus. Let's say just 2 people buy. That's $20,000 from one podcast interview. Like, let's do more of that thing. Like that's really easy and really hard to screw up. So that's my basic thinking. First of all, is it's not a mystery. It's math. What's the math? First off, how much money do you need? What do you charge? How many clients do you need? Almost nobody does this, by the way. This is like elementary business 101, but no one does it. Like this might sound super stupid. Oh, I'm the only one that hadn't done that. No. Like I didn't even do it for a decade. So if you want $10,000 a month, maybe that's your first milestone you want to get to. Well, if your course is $500, you need to sell 20, right? Is that the math? $500 times 20 units is $10,000. Great. So now forget the 10,000 for a minute. You just need to sell 20 copies of your course. So that's the end. Well, how many eyeballs do I need for that? Well, it depends on the channel. Your conversion rate should be different. And with BOPA, for instance, you'll get around a 10% conversion rate to the sales page, typically. And that's a rule of thumb. Every business is a little different, but 10%. So you need, I don't know, let's say 2,000 eyeballs. The math's not right. 200 eyeballs. That'd be too low. Let's say 1,000 eyeballs, converting at 5%, I think is 20 people. So every month your game is, I'm going to watch my number of eyeballs and my conversion rate. And I get humans to the sales page, and I need those humans to convert and give me money. So every month I'm just measuring, well, what's my eyeball strategy? And BOPA is just the easiest, hardest to screw up one I've ever found. Because what I'm doing, one of the things I'm doing in this podcast, I love talking to people and sharing. So I actually just enjoy that and would do that no matter what. It also happens to be a marketing channel for us. I did a workshop yesterday where I taught an audience of like a couple hundred people, and 5 of them booked sales calls for today. 1 of them's converted and another one will probably do. And I'm like, great, that was a good use of time. I love teaching. I love talking. I could talk all day. And we happen to get clients out of it as well. So great. So BOPA, borrowing other people's audiences, is simply finding people in and around your industry who already have an audience. Don't build audiences, just borrow people's. So Brian, you already have an audience. By coming here and sharing, a couple hundred people will come into our audience. But they don't come as some ice cold Facebook ad, Instagram ad person that's never heard of me before. They come after hearing me ramble on for 53 minutes about these different things, fear and refunds and marketing. It's like, great, because that's all the stuff we coach. So if you go to that resource page and schedule the call with us and want to explore what this would look like for you, it's like, awesome. You are one of the most prime prospects we could possibly invent. So you're just ready. And you came from the sales channel that we teach. So even better. So instead of trying to think about audience building, and this is like the first product I had was how to build an email list. It's called 10K7, and we sold thousands of copies of it. But the core concept was growing it from scratch. And that's not the right way to think about it. It's not the easiest way to think about it. You could do it that way. We grew a list of several tens of thousands of people. But when we flipped our mindset to borrowing other people's audiences, let's just go on. Let's do a lead magnet swap once a week. Let's do a podcast once a week. Let's do a workshop once a week. In fact, this summer, I'm on a tour doing that. Doing 3 partnerships a week, 1 30 to 60 minute podcast interview, 1 lead magnet swap, and 1 workshop. We'll grow our list by over 100,000 during that time period and sell $400,000 or $500,000 in units directly from those things, and indirectly over time from the list, and not a lot more. So the definition of borrowing other people's audiences is instead of trying to build it from scratch, go borrow other people's. And in exchange, you're just going to give them content. Because every audience that exists needs content. The podcast needs an interview. The email list needs a good resource to share. And the person on YouTube that has a big list loves having experts in the industry come teach their audience. And those are 3 of the easiest ones to do. In fact, if you're just starting out, the simplest thing to do is a lead magnet swap. Take a good resource you have, go email 10 people today that you kind of know or know of a little bit, and say, hey, I have this great lead magnet. I'd love to share it with your list, and I would love to share your resource with my list. You'll get some subscribers, and I'll get some subscribers. That's it. That's all you got to do. And you'll get hundreds of people a week just from that. Or you could go pay for it on Facebook, and you won't have the trust transfer that exists when you have an audience vouch for you. You'll have these ice cold people that come in, and they'll buy. You can get that to work. We do. We have a great Facebook ad funnel. We teach that. We do that, but as a second channel. Because once you have BOPA installed, you can grow a business to several $1 million a year just with that. You layer on a second channel like an ad channel, and you can grow it to 5-10 million a year with that. So that's the order we typically go in: is BOPA first, Facebook ad, or an ad channel second. Usually it's Facebook right now, but that can vary, and that works really well. So if you're sub $1 million a year, $5 million a year, and you don't have a predictable marketing channel, like you generate sales, word of mouth, and random things you do. The email list generates some, but it's like a whack-a-mole. Do 1 lead magnet swap a week. And send them to the page when they get the lead magnet, the sales page or the booking page or what your sales mechanism is, and you will generate sales from it. And if you don't, just look at the math. Was it eyeballs that were the problem, or was it conversions that were the problem? And whatever it is, go fix it. If you need more eyeballs, do more partnerships. Do it with bigger people. If you need better conversions, write a better sales page and optimize it as you go. So that is thinking about it all as math. And if it's not working, it's just a math problem somewhere. Find the first thing that's red and go fix it. And second of all, the channel just with the highest success rate that we found after like 12 years, especially sub million, sub 5 million, is BOPA. Like it's the hardest one to screw up.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it definitely is the right approach because all the reasons that you said, you can try ads, you can spend a real lot of money and not even figure out the thing that is the ad that's actually going to make things work. Or you get leads and you found out how to get these cheap leads, but they're not people who buy. And they don't trust you, or you can make content and you can create this content, slowly build this audience, but then you find out that they're not actually spending that much time with you. Yeah. And so they still got to go through all these email sequences before they finally eventually buy. Yeah. But like what you just said here, you have the other person's audience, they have the audience, it matches yours, you can show them the thing, and you can build the trust with them, and then it just goes, okay, now they come over here, and then they buy.
Like there's 3 things every sale needs. This is without exception in any business that exists. Starbucks on the corner, the coffee shop, your business, my business. First, you got to get their eyes, then you got to get their hearts, then you can get their wallets. And they have to go in that order. First, they have to know you exist. They can't buy it if they literally don't know you exist. Then they have to have some level of trust. You got to have their heart. And then you can give them a simple call to action and a good deal, and they'll hire you. But like ads are the hardest by a mile. If you don't have 50 grand to light on fire and flush down the toilet without having a seizure and you touch ads, you are wasting your time completely. That's table stakes. And there's a lot of other things you need to do to make those work. Some people get lucky, almost no one does. But if you enter ads without that as like the minimum viable, you're screwed. Just don't even touch it. Yes. BOPA though, like it's really hard. Like imagine let's put this in like normal life situation. Let's say you had a conference and 1,000 people are there. And I get up on stage and speak for 60 minutes and just share tactical marketing things. And at the end, I'm like, hey, I'll be in the back with my book. If anybody wants to learn more, just grab the book. And I literally just stand by the door and everybody that walks out, I shake their hand and show the book. I mean, you could be like the worst salesperson ever and still sell 50 copies of your book. Like the pitch is practically not all that useful once you've spent an hour with somebody and the trust is transferred from the person hosting the event. Like that's what this podcast is. You have hundreds of people listening. They're hearing me. Trust is transferred. I have a thing that some people can benefit from. Most people can't actually. And if you're interested in that, go to growthtools.com/heights and see if we can help you. Like, and some people will and some people won't. And I'm not interested in being a good salesperson. I just want to share the things we've learned, let other people hear it, and the people that feel called to it, go to it. That'd be great. But man, if you want Facebook ads to work, you better be an A+ marketer. If you're B+, you're screwed, and you better have 50 grand to light on fire and flush down the toilet, or you're screwed too. But if you got those two things, you actually can make it work. And it is math as well. It's just harder math. And when you lose, it sucks. Because at the end of the day, like if this podcast produces no sales calls and no clients for us, I still enjoyed it. It was still a win, and I lost no money. But if I spend 10 grand this week on ads and it produces no customers, I just lost 10 grand. And you better be able to do that for 90 days to figure out that funnel to get it to break even, and another 90 to get it to actually profitable. And if you can't do that, you're out. And content can be worse because it's more sneaky. You could spend years writing a newsletter and building a newsletter and have a bunch of non-buyers or be in an industry that doesn't convert, not actually have a product at all. Like I did that. The first 3 years was that. And it's like, crap, I got to sell stuff. And now what do I even sell to them? So like it's a secondary thought, which is a problem a lot of creators have. They think about themselves as creators, not as business owners. And that is a thing almost all of them will have to convert on if they want to maintain and sustain over time. Otherwise, you write content, and guess what? Content doesn't produce revenue. And if you don't have revenue, you will not keep doing anything, and you can't help people. So, like, thinking of the most fundamental way to think about it for me is, what's the problem I solve? At the end of the day, my newsletter, what problem does it solve? Because if you write via that, you can build a product that solves it even more in depth. But what's the problem? Like, I think the most root level entrepreneur question I've ever heard is, what's a problem so interesting, I'd gladly bet the next 20 years of my life on solving it? And then go do that. And man, the stuff will click into place. Listen to wise counsel and all that stuff. But like, take some of the things we talked about here and go do it. Like, if you do that, like, then your newsletter does something. Because, hey man, like, you got a 50% open rate on the newsletter. Awesome. What's the percentage of people actually doing anything with it? Around 1%, maybe. James Clear has 3 million people in his newsletter. How many people's habits are really, really changed though? He has such breadth, a lot, but the percentage is really low. The people, nobody takes free advice. Nobody takes unsolicited advice for sure. They get combative on that. But when you pay money, you actually listen. When you pay a lot of money, you listen a lot more. So, yes.
Yeah, it's great. All right. So one last thing is that on the show, I like to have every guest ask a question to our audience. So if you could ask our audience anything after everything we talked about today, whether it's something you're curious about, something you kind of want to get everybody thinking about, what would that be?
I'm gonna state it as a challenge. I challenge you today to set a 10-minute timer on your phone. Literally 10-minute timer. And once it's set, ask yourself, ask God, ask love, meditate, whatever frame you want to put on it. What is the biggest fear holding me back in life? So my question for you is, what's your biggest fear? But I don't want you to just like logically think about it. Turn off the logic brain for a minute. If you're listening to this, you're in logic brain 24/7. Like, turn that thing off for a second. 10 minutes, quiet room, go for a walk, and ask the question out loud. Hey, I asked this morning. What's my biggest fear? I'll read you mine. I wrote down. This is the way I articulated it. This is another version of the same question. What's blocking me from receiving everything you have for me today? Here's what I wrote down. 10 minutes in the coffee shop, eyes closed, my little notebook out. Losing everything, being ignored, being alone. Those answers that came for me. And I was like, all right, second question. What's the truth? Because the fear is a lie almost all the time. So if that's the fear, what's the truth? And I get a good answer that was helpful and orienting for me today. So my challenge to you would be 10 minutes right now. First 5, what's the biggest fear blocking me? Second thing, but what's true? Write it down, and today, operate through that lens. Don't operate through the lens of, man, I'm not as good of a writer as Brian, or I can't do a high-ticket thing because whatever's coming to your mind. Like, don't operate through that. Write it down and throw it away. But operate from whatever the true things that were. Do just a one-day challenge, 10 minutes, then write it down somewhere you can listen and work today through that. That'd be my challenge to you. Share it with me too. Brian@growthtools.com is my email address. Share, like, put fear and truth in the subject line. I would love to see it. What's your biggest fear? I've shared mine with you. What's the truth?
Yeah, that's a great question. All right. Well, Brian, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.